Hello, viewer. Welcome to The Insight. My name is Eugene Ochieng. Here on this platform, we provide insights on political issues, current affairs, amongst other myriads of thorny issues affecting you directly or indirectly. And as we dissect these issues further, we bring on board various stakeholders who shall engage us through their thoughts on the topic of discussion. We also ensure that you are updated on weekly happenings as we are alert on weekly preview. Today with my panelists, we discuss COVID-19 economic impacts to small businesses and youth space in politics and leadership, amongst other tickling issues in Kenya. Today, my panel is made up of leaders and intellectuals. We have Johnson Samboya, a realtor by profession. He is also a youth activist. On my far right, we have Ronald Bosi, a governance expert, entrepreneur, accountant, and the managing partner of Ronald's Global Foundation, amongst the many hats he wears. Now, gentlemen, you may introduce yourselves, and if at all there is something I've left out, you might intimate us.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene. My name is Ronald Bosi. I'm the group managing partner for Ronald's LLP East Africa. It's an accounting, tax, and advisory firm operating in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Tanzania, advising SMEs on how they can be able to on financial management issues and tax issues and issues of governance. Thank you.
To me, as he said, my name is Johnson Samuel Boya. I am a land economist and a realtor by profession. Currently, I work with Springtide Properties Limited as a business development manager, come property manager at the same time. And I'm more or less of a, what do we call this? It's called a process enthusiast while budding in entrepreneurship. That's the basic information I would like to give about myself.
Lady Justice Martha Koome is the new Chief Justice appointee. I'd love to start with you, Mr. Ronald. Do you think this is a gender balance or was it based on merit?
Thank you, Eugene. I don't think that there is a question of gender balance, but merely on merit. Because the challenge is when what we have is when women win positions, we start shouting about it's a woman. But when men get appointed, nobody talks about it. So I believe that, and from the interviews and from the track record that Mother Koome has, is merely on merit, and she deserves to be there.
But we have people like Fred Ngatia crying foul, and of course they're disputing Koome's nomination. And on the same note, we have Professor Olive Muhaki Mugenda, who was actually the acting chair of the commission, saying that they will not be giving the names or how the candidates performed. What do you think?
Yeah, it's okay for everybody to protest appointment because, as a matter of fact, everybody believes is the best. But that is why we have the interviewing committee to decide that. You cannot now say that the employer made faults. As a matter of fact, I believe the team that was interviewing, they had a criteria, and if they tell us that Mother Koome met that criteria, and based on their discussions and the background checks of the other participants, who are we to question unless we have tangible evidence to believe that the other candidates fared on well or not? So I believe for now, as a country, we need to more trust at least institutions. And if decisions are made by a committee and who is actually the employer of the Chief Justice, the Judicial Service Commission, and then as citizens, we have just, we believe and move on. Otherwise, we'll just continue to protest and all that, meaning that we are actually prejudicial. We had already made a decision who we want to be the next Chief Justice. Then why would the interviews take place if we already had predicted who will become the next Chief Justice?
Mr.
Yeah.
Samba, do you have
I think it's more or less not of a contrary opinion.
Yeah.
Personally, they were elected as the commission
Yeah.
to handle the matter of interviews, and the person who's supposed to be elected.
So all of you agree
as-
that
as-
it's
as
based
the-
on
as the
merit
judge.
and not any other.
Yes, in all uttermost faith, we first of all, as my fellow counterpart has said, we need to trust in the people we employ to give us the people to undertake the job. Regardless of whether she is a female or a male, the question is, will she now be up to enact some of the
No,
things that she highlighted she's going
I
to
get the
look
point
into?
right. Now, should the
Yes.
parliament itself approve Kohome, for the first time in Kenya, we'll be having both the CJ and the DCJ as the in Supreme Court. We'll also have Justice Njoki Susan, that is the judge of Supreme Court. That is a lady as well. We also have the chief registrar of the judiciary, being Anna Otieno Amadi, and that is the registrar of the Supreme Court. We have Esther Nyayaki. All of these are ladies. What do you think? Is Kenya making milestone on approving and adopting women leadership in Kenya?
Yeah, I believe we're making a milestone, but even the mere fact of saying ladies, I don't think that is even the right way to put it. It's just maybe the question we'll be asking: is there any of them who has rigged his position or her position into wherever she is now? Because if it were men, will we be talking about the same question? So I believe for us, the mere fact that they are women, I believe there is no non-issue. It's a non-issue actually. We need to move on as a country, and though we have these people who have come into positions, and women are rising, by the way, because unless we are actually captive of the past and the traditions whereby men ruled everywhere, but women are rising. If you look at what is happening in our Kcpe performance, if you look at the KCSE performance, if you go to universities and colleges, women are equally competing and even topping the classes. So when it comes to leadership, they also need an equal opportunity. And because there's an investment that has been done, especially on the girl child, and that is beginning to bear fruits, because now you find that there are now many even women are occupying leadership positions even within the corporate sector. So I believe that it's only that now we are realizing the fruits of empowering the girl child. Maybe the question that we'll be asking now is, what is also happening to the boy child? Is he also being given an equal opportunity, or is he being prepared also for the future tasks, so that no one gender is biased in terms of development?
Yeah, but I think also it needs to boil down a question of if and when are we placing our priorities? Are we looking at matters gender in matters transactions that we are doing, or we want to look into competency as the transactions that is supposed to take place? We've just received the results of the Kcpe students, and we saw ladies outshining. It simply shows us that Kenya as a country has decided to stay woke of the fact that there is an improvement in the transactions that are taking place, regardless of the gender. And most of all, the cry of the Kenyans right now is, it is not a man or a lady who is supposed to come and give us the redemptive aspect in matters transactions, but it is, are we having competent people who are chartering us to a right path? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. And to me, personally, I would applaud the efforts of the ladies, because I believe to them it has taken discipline, it has taken toil, it has taken hard work for them to be where they are. And if we just can be able to allow them do the mandate that they've been accorded, we probably would manage to see them as our leaders and less of the gender that they tend to hold.
So, would you say that the men have been left out in these, the boy child actually in being empowered?
I would say it's not a matter of the boy child being left out. It's a matter of how competent are we as men pushing ourselves to maintain the positions we are to hold.
So are also men competent? Are men also competent?
Yes, gentlemen are well competent. They are vast. We have a lot in the industry who've been able to work. But it is a may the best team win aspect.
Now, okay, let us now delve deeply in on BBI. There's been disquiet in Parliament, as we have seen members of Parliament, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, are saying that there are some ulterior motives behind BBI. We've also seen Mr. Irungu Kangata, and of course the Senator of Nyamira, that is Okongo Mogeni, are saying that before this BBI bill is taken to the people for further consideration, then maybe they should make some amendments for them before it is taken to the people. What do you think about it, Samuel?
I think as much as me being a youth, the Building Bridges initiative as it came by, it more or less was just to give a chance, but we are not certain of its effectiveness as it's going to cover. Extensively, I look at it as issues have not been rendered quite well in addressing them to the normal youth who is seeking answers as to why the government is quite oppressive on their end, and they're being used as objects rather than people of merit who can be used to transact decisions. So to me, I'd probably say, however much it is building bridges in quotes, it is an initiative that is supposed to be quite inclusive and participative. It need, to me, if it can be looked into more of an aspect of how exactly is it going to be practical rather than theoretical. When we get to look at it in the future, it's not going to be the leaders that we have who probably will be holding those positions.
So do you also see some loopholes in BBI? Do you see some?
Yeah, I definitely look at it, especially in the aspects of some of the agendas of inclusivity, because most of the time as youths, we are excluded in the decisions that are being made as concerns these initiatives. And if at all we included, it's just a minority of us, which probably might not outrule the fact that when we want decisions to be implemented, they might be looked at in the light of the youth as it's supposed to be.
But well, I think the BBI provides, there's a lot that, there's something that the youth haven't been left out, actually. We have seen the president saying that we have, that the youth have got a committee that have been set for them, a commission actually. So the commission will comprise of around 7 people, 4 of them at least must be youth. And of course, I think these are, the youths have been included also in BBI. What do you think about that?
I think my point still gets to stand out. It's not a matter of how many youths have been appointed in the commission, is how practical will the transactions of the commission be available to the normal youth who is transacting his daily activities. Because we might be having youths who've been appointed to be in that commission, but they might as well be appointed to transact what the commission states as a mandate of the government. So it should be, however much, it's not about the people we appoint to those positions, is whatever it is that has been mandated for us to work, is it to our advantage, or is it going to spell out what we're supposed to transact? Because human beings are inherent. Every other person has his own opinions, values, views, and accreditations.
Mr. We have seen the BBI.
Yeah.
We have seen those some 11 county assemblies had passed a totally different a BBI bill from another 33. What do you think about this?
Okay, and in terms of the
who is to blame actually? Who is to blame?
I believe the blame is on the politicians, because you see, the politicians do their thing to benefit themselves. The reason why I say this is because, why is it that when it comes to debating the BBI and supporting it the way it is now, there is division in parliament, and they are not new divisions. They are traditional divisions that are divided in terms of the content of the BBI and even the errors on it. Because those who support and who have traditionally supported the BBI, they are saying, even with the errors, we still have to proceed. And those who have consistently protested, we actually, even if without the errors, we didn't even expect them to support the BBI anyway. So even they are just finding some faults in it, which is the differences. So the biggest the biggest challenge is the people who suffer from all those political bickering are the common mwananchi. Exactly. Because even I believe if you ask a majority of the Kenyans, most of the Kenyans don't understand the content of the BBI. So BBI is mostly a political document, even though it might have some goodies in it. And the way my colleague has said, that in terms of inclusion, involving the people in understanding the issues, the content of the BBI, and even making a decision, that has not been done.
Do you tend to support what Murkomen says, that Senator Murkomen, that there's some ulterior motives of the promoters of BBI? Do you think it's like, is BBI a Trojan horse, or is it a game changer actually?
You see, me, I cannot trust Murkomen, isn't it, on that statement? Because one, traditionally, Murkomen has always resisted the BBI. So why should he be an advisor? If there's an ulterior motive, then he needs to explain what the ulterior motive it is.
Exactly.
Because Murkomen is a leader of is a senator. He has a following. He has to explain to the following that yes, this is the ulterior motive. But you see, the problem is, us as citizens, we're only there to listen to what Murkomen will say and make a decision. So how do we trust politicians when they have already been taken sides from the initial aspect of it?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going for a short break, but when we are back, we are going to delve deeply into the topic of today, but that is about the space of the youth in the politics and leadership of this country. We're also going to look at the COVID-19 impacts on small businesses. I would like us to shift our focus on the COVID-19, which has been ravaging the world since 2019. In a move to mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta on 26th of March this year declared a ban on movement in and out of Nairobi, Kajiado, Machakos, Kiambu, and Nakuru. Now, President Kenyatta on live television address banned international travels. He introduced 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. curfew, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew, for the 5 counties. The meetings and worshiping places were also banned. Face-to-face learning came to a close, and we saw the sale of alcohol being banned, and restaurants only allowed takeaway. Now, small businesses being among those that have been affected adversely. I'd love us to look at this, Mr. Ronald. What do you think? Has the government put any measures to help the small businesses during this 2019 pandemic?
According to
COVID-19.
my interaction with small SMEs and also running SMEs, I've not seen any measures that have been put up by the government in order to cushion the small businesses against the pandemic. And even to add salt into injuries, you know that the government revoked the tax incentives that they had put into place in order to cushion the SMEs from the pandemic. So actually, even if there are any efforts that have been put, that has not been felt with the SMEs that I interact with, especially if you compare what is happening even cross-border or in other countries abroad. So SMEs are quite exposed. Never before has it been like this. Most SMEs are closing down shop because they cannot survive the hard times. Recently, we had the minimum tax being introduced to say that even if SMEs are making losses, they must borrow loan to pay taxes, because that's the implication of the minimum tax. Because when you say that you're going to introduce minimum tax on every business, regardless of whether they're making profit or not, then you are saying that even if you're making a loss, then you're supposed to go to the bank, get a loan, and pay taxes, which is quite very punitive. Thanks to the Machakos Code that put that law into, gave an injunction on that particular piece of legislation that could be quite even devastating for most of the SMEs. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done by the government in order to cushion SMEs. One is to ensure that there is a good tax regime that favors SMEs. Of course, the government needs money, but you cannot milk a cow that is dead. You cannot ask now the SMEs, even though you are dying, we need taxes to survive.
Exactly.
We must find a way, how do we feed these SMEs, or how do we get them into operations before now we're demanding the taxes in it?
So generally, before we go to that,
Yes.
maybe you would like to tell me about how you spoke about minimum tax.
Yes, yes.
And of course, that was introduced through the Finance Act of 2020.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell us how it impacts on small businesses, maybe deeply?
Yeah, minimum tax is a tax that was introduced at 1% on all businesses. But lastly, we saw some exemptions being granted to big corporations like Kenya Airways because of maybe the government's taking it. But you see, the minimum tax was supposed to affect all businesses, 1%, and it's supposed to be paid in installments. 4 installments, actually. The first installment should be on the 20th of the 4th month, 20th of the 6th month, 20th of the 9th month, and the 20th of the 12th month of the accounting period of an organization. And this minimum tax is supposed to be paid based on the turnover. So normally the Kenyan tax regime taxes entities based on the profitability. But this was a disruptive tax measure that was being adopted. We have seen other many countries adopt minimum tax, but not at the rate of 1%. Even though it is a tax that applies to other countries, 1% was much far-fetched. It could have been lesser, but again, looking at even the timing now of the implementation of the minimum tax, the timing doesn't allow. You cannot be introducing 1% minimum tax when the country's economy and the SMEs are on their knees. They are almost closing shop.
So what are some of the, maybe some of the tips or some of the things that the government can do to help the small businesses during these economic disruptions by COVID-19?
Okay, some of the things that the government can do is, and I always say that in order to disrupt an economy, if you really want to empower people, you don't empower people by necessarily giving them money, but giving them opportunities. And opportunities comes by opening up the markets. The country heavily depends on imports. And you look at even our roads, mostly we've really invested a significant amount in the construction of roads. What is the role of SMEs? You'll find that most of the supplies being consumed by these multinationals that we hire to do the infrastructure projects in this country import most of their, including things like cement, including very basic aspects of it. If we're able to buy locally materials and hire locally labor, then we're going to spur the SMEs. So creating market for local SMEs is very critical. The other aspect of how you can also open up market, look at our neighbors. We have market in Uganda, we have market in Rwanda, in Tanzania, we have market in Southern Sudan. How can we open up this market so that as Kenyans, SMEs can access these markets by providing our goods to these other neighboring countries, and this is going to actually open up the SMEs. The other aspect of it is through taxation. Taxation can be used to spur up SMEs, whereby you say that if you start a business, and what some of the recommendations we have in BBI, that you have a tax holiday when you start a business. From the registrar, you have a tax holiday, so that your business is able to pick up and you're able to start making some profitability and recovering your cost of investment. Then now you start making money. So this is going actually to encourage entrepreneurship, and then also trying to really have incentives to open in terms of issues to do the manufacturing. How are we actually able to spur manufacturing? And the government actually can also provide access to capital. Access to capital is very critical in trying to spur the SME growth. As you see now, the government is competing with the SMEs in borrowing from banks. And banks choose to actually lend their money to the government as opposed to lending to the SMEs, because government gives them risk-free. So you see, that is denying SMEs access to capital, because you go to the banks, they give you almost a whole list of questions. Actually, the bank is asking you whether you have money before they give you the money. So, yeah.
So actually, what do you think? How has it impacted actually because we must understand that there's some businesses which were closed. In mitigating this COVID-19, we have like some restaurants, are only allowed to take away. We have the bars and the clubs have been closed. The sale of alcohol. So how would these people being helped during this time? Because majorly the owners of these places also, their activities have been disrupted. So what next for them?
In terms of the hospitality industry, and it's not this issue of the pandemic affecting the hospitality and the travel industry is not only unique to Kenya. It applies across the globe, you know. But there are alternatives, because you might find that there's those hospitality sectors that operate in a very vast property. So it could easily ensure social distancing. So the government could provide out regulations to ensure that even though we go to hotels and dine there, there is sufficient space to ensure that there is social distancing. There is those safety precautions that have been put into place by the facility to ensure that those who dine in those facilities, their health or their safety has been taken into interest. And you wonder, there's also lodges, by the way. If you go to a lodge, you know, there is a very less likelihood that you are likely to contract COVID-19, especially if there is proper fumigation and there is social distancing. And this is actually affecting travel unnecessarily. If the government could have brought up some rules and regulations for the hospitality industry, it would have been much better than shutting down the economy altogether.
We've seen the rise in the standards of living, the cost of living in some certain goods like petrol, the normal goods that we use as Kenyans. So my question is, what can we do to curb inflation during this time? And of course, the role of the political class in this.
Okay. Maybe if I comment that on Eugene, is that the first thing I think is you need to understand why does inflation occur. Inflation actually is whereby you have you have money in an economy, but there are very few goods which you can buy. So meaning that those few goods, you have to pay a very high price to access those particular goods. The only thing is who has the money. You might find only one side of the economy, they have money, and the other economy, especially the poor people, don't have money.
Yes.
But you see the people who have money actually driving up the cost of living. So the solution, and you see that also inflation is being driven by those things that are used in productivity. You see, like fuel, it plays a very great role in production. So if there is a rise in the cost of fuel, it's going to actually automatically affect the cost of production. And if the cost of production is affected, then there is a high cost of goods that has been produced. The other aspect that is very useful in the productivity is the electricity. And recently you had Kenya Power say that they are paying almost 16 billion shillings in power loss, and they have to transfer those costs, those losses to the consumer, who are these manufacturing companies, residentials and all that. And that is also going to increase inflation. The other aspect of it, if we are not also in control of productivity, you realize that we also import a lot of things. And then now we're not able to control the international market. And you see, recently, we're importing a lot of pharmaceutical products from India. India has a problem now because we are not able to access those imports. Then the few that are available, the cost of living goes up. So to be able to address the inflation, you have to understand what causes inflation. And be able to solve inflation, you have to promote self-reliance. Like, for instance, for me, I've never understood at all why even we talk about importation of maize in Kenya. Why do we import maize? If you visit the Western region and the Rift Valley region, there is vast land that can be used to feed Kenya, to feed Sudan, to feed Somali, to feed every other East African country, and those countries that require, maize. Exactly. But you see, as a country, the political class have driven us in a place whereby we still have to import the most basic thing that we can even produce. Soon we will start importing sugar, and we've already killed the sugar sector in the country. So we're like thinking it's easier to import anything than to just ensure that to build local capacity in production. Eventually, when there will be problems or trouble in the international markets, then the inflation is going to hit the roof. So the most important thing is to address inflation is to build local capacity for production. Like now, India has a problem in pharmaceutical, and I had the CS for Health mention a very good thing. Now, this is the time to build local capacity to do what? To produce pharmaceuticals. But why do we have to wait until we reach that difficult position? Then now we'll think about creating a local capacity. Because then there are other industries that are being troubled because of imports, but like we are condoning that particular aspect of importing goods. The other issue of trying to avoid inflation is to ensure that those factors of production and the critical components of production, like energy levels, because the government is still a monopoly in the production of electricity. How do they affect that electricity by making sure that the cost of electricity is down? They inspect what are these energy losses that are being experienced by Kenya Power, and ensure that the power bill that every one of us get is more realistic.
Sure.
How do we ensure that, how do we control the cost of importing fuel? Tax element in fuel is very high. So if you check out the tax element in the fuel imports, is also going to really reduce the level of inflation. We're also saying that we have local productivity of oil in Turkana. We have not seen the fruits of that. How do we realign ourselves as a country so that we start producing, even though just some component of fuel that can be used locally, even if we don't export? That is going actually to check out the level of inflation within the country.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have something?
No, I think he's overexhausted it by giving all the solutions.
Yeah.
to
You're
it.
right. I would like us to engage on the youth issues about this about the space of the youth. That we're now looking at a completely something different from what we have been discussing on the economic impacts of COVID-19 on small businesses. Now, I'd love us to look at the youth issues, and of course, according to the 2019 census, 75% of the Kenyan population are made up of the youth below the age of 35. And of course, with such numbers, this is the most consequential block, I believe, in whatever aspect, with the political, economical, or social. Now, the question today is that what is keeping young people, what is it that is keeping young people out of politics? And how can we break down the barriers that hold them back? Now, I'll start with you, Sam.
Yes, I think one of the major things that keeps youths from politics, it's the nature of politics in Kenya as a country in itself. And quite to put it in the light, it's because with the happenings that as youths we have had or received ever since probably the 2007 elections, the 2013, and now even the ones that we are nearing to, the 2017 and the ones we are nearing to do by 2022, the nature of politics itself has not been a clear and credible manner of elections. And the politics is always a pro and anti aspects of who is who in the politics sector. And if at all you probably yearn to engage or enter in, you have to probably have to go through a rigorous, painful process for someone to probably get to reason out with you as one of
what is this rigorous process?
A good example, when probably I was in school at the University of Nairobi, for you to probably get to be noticed, first of all, you have to seek popularity and probably get to go through having a bigger brother or so to assist you in funding for whatever it is you want to aspire to, before you can actually gain the aspect of making sure you deliver to what people have to get in. And that was just politics of school. But now when it comes down to the ground in itself, you are incapacitated as a youth to probably lead with only ideologies and matters. People feel like you have to have a budget for your campaign, and you also have to have a moving and a mass that proves to the fact that you can be able to do the politics in itself. So all this coming to a constant by the fact that we have been pushed to understand politics in the nature that we have grown to see it. It's the same way like curbing corruption has become a problem because of the way you've been taught and how to do. And the mindset that probably has been inflicted upon us as youths at times can be a little bit hurting to us. You probably are given the mindset of just acting upon things. You want to be led and you don't want to lead because you feel like leading in itself is a higher risk that you're not able to transact. However much we want results that are quite on the go, but as youths, we also are afraid of risks. And it takes a risk to bring a leader. It takes a huge risk to fight for some of the things. Most of the people who fought for independence took much, much more risk They would stand the aspect of being fought to the point of death, so that at least the independence might be able to come through. But at times, to some of us as youths, it's a daunting task for us to take and undertake.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, there's something that you just said that for you to be a leader, like maybe be a politician in Kenya as a youth, then you must have the economic muscles to do so.
Exactly.
What if as the youth, since we are the youth are around 75%, what if they agreed as the youth that we only want leaders, we want young leaders there in parliament, we want young leaders as presidents? Do you think we can manage this? Because it's the youth that are the most, of course, in terms of the population.
Exactly. One, we need to understand that the youth or age spectrum is from about 18 to 35.
Yes.
And you need to understand, however much we are, most of us as youths, ideologies, opinions, and differences differ in every other aspect that we tend to take. You see, for example, I might decide to back someone who is my fellow youth, and at the same time, I might not. Why? Because probably we don't agree in one or two or three things. Another thing is probably in the way that I was brought up.
Sure.
You've learned to lean more or less on not ideologies, but on ethnic grounds.
Okay.
That is something that is even affecting us as youth. We don't get to see the ideologies that someone gets to bring in, or what it is that they are bringing as matters change, but it's probably because we either went to school with you, or we are probably of the same tribe, and our dialect, we tend to.
But I believe
hang
that
around
cuts
the same
across,
things.
where the ethnicity cuts across.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the fact that it cuts across, it now requires us as youths to have a different and changed mindset.
Okay.
To want to bring a revolution that people can bring in together. The choice is even given by God, and the government has given us that freedom of choice.
Sure.
I can persuade you by my opinions to do as I please or I require, but you are to choose on what you're supposed to do. You can choose today not to be corrupt ever in your life and be integral, but some other person might choose otherwise.
So do you think it will still be difficult for the youths to rise to the top positions in this country?
Rising to the top position, it may only be possible if we decide to change our mindset as youths in how we look at things. Most of the time, someone said it's difficult for them to probably go and elect a leader because of what they get to see. But it brings more harm than good, because bad leaders are not chosen by people who decided not to vote.
Okay.
When you decide not to vote, it simply means you've not taken part in the aspect of choosing the right leader. And of course, the wrong leader will be chosen, and at the end of the day, we'll keep on squabbling and making noises as to why we have wrong leadership. Yet we did not decide to do what? To take part. So if we are told to change the narrative as it's supposed to be,
Sure.
we have to have a changed mindset and a oneness in thinking on a way we can revolutionize Kenya.
Okay, I get your point.
Aspect.
Now, Mr. Ronald,
Yes.
well, the President Uhuru Kenyatta,
Yeah.
in one of his speeches, says that, and I quote, "The youth must be handled delicately, as they are the future of our country." Do you think the political elites are actually genuine with the youth? Like, do they see them for the true worth as the stakeholders and the custodians of the future, or they are seen just as a mere number of political rallies and votes?
You see, the challenge we have is we are highly in a capitalistic economy. Now, capitalistic economy is God for us or every man for himself. So yeah, of course, politicians have said that they have the youth interest at heart, but that has not been demonstrated in terms of implementation. How do we actually actualize that? Let me tell you, if leadership was serious about this country, we will not be importing every expatriates to come and work in this country. One is capacity building. I've never seen a deliberate effort to build the capacity of the youth by sending them even to, the government need to come up with a program whereby they need to sponsor the youth of this country to even foreign universities. Because one time I'm in India, in China, sorry, and I'm interacting with some of the fellows, and they say how the Chinese economy has grown. You go to America, the Chinese students are so many sponsored by various organizations from China. You go to Europe, you go to Germany, you go to all the developed countries. There are those Chinese that are being sponsored for further education and to get the technical advancement they require so that they can be deployed to Kenya to build roads. to build houses, to build all that. For us, we are here just consuming and telling our youth, you're okay, you are the leaders of tomorrow. What are we doing to build their capacity? Probably, what I will say is that one time we need a president who will say, okay, look what, we need to build a road. Even we need to build a road of 20 kilometers.
Sure.
I need this youth to go and learn about roads. They come, they lead the project, they do that, they learn. From there, we can be able to deploy them to build other roads. We can go and also build roads in other African countries. Why do we have to always say, okay, look, our youth cannot build roads. They can only be offering they can only do the handwork. They can only be there to offer the informal labor. They don't have skills. But then there is no strategic effort to invest in youth and really bring their capacity up to par with the Chinese capacity, with other countries from the developed. Because look, nobody is born a fool, but it is the journey of education that actually separates people.
Exactly.
So actually, according to you, the intention of the politicians is that to the youth is not genuine at all.
No, they've not been deliberate.
They have not been deliberate.
There is no evidence to show that they have been deliberate about capacity building for the youth to actually make them now the leaders of tomorrow. And two, going to our recently, now we have the CBC system. I've looked at the CBC system, which is now the education system that is supposed now to promote the youth and the future. What I could see also in that CBC system, and I will challenge the people in the education, can they also put a course in governance and leadership and politics in that particular, so that as the youth are growing up, they know their role in the politics and the leadership,
and they will take it
and then they will take that. And then that aspect of it is the price of politics in this country. Because if today I talk badly about somebody, and then now they are going to resist me, to stop me and all that, so we always castigate and punish people who are against our political divide here.
Well, still about the youth, I'll have us look at the 2010 Constitution. On the same note of what we're talking about, the things that the government perhaps will do to enlighten the youth. The 2010 Constitution has got a provision addressing and espousing the concerns of the youth. And particularly in Article 55, and I'd love to read Part B. So the state shall take measures including affirmative action programs to ensure that the youth have opportunities to associate, be represented, and participate in political, social, economic, and other spheres of life, amongst others. I'd also like to look at Article 97, that is Clause 1, which requires that political parties nominate 12 members to represent special interest, including the youth. Now, the representation of the youth in the Senate is provided in Article 98, which requires that the Senate have 2 members, and that is one woman and a lady. We also have that is at Article 177, which of course is talking about the youth representation in county assemblies. Now, when we look at these, all these provisions in the Constitution, according to you, what do you think? Do you think that the youth, the Parliament actually have implemented these as stated in the Constitution?
I've not reviewed the parliamentary implementation of the Constitution, but the Constitution is just it gives guidance.
Sure.
But the implementation is a different ballgame together.
Exactly.
Because that is the most important thing. And you cannot write everything that will be done within the Constitution. This attitude and the spirit is what really matters. So for me, as much as there is the implementation of the Constitution, I don't see it in the attitude, the spirit, and the action that is being taken in order to uplift.
Maybe you have a contrary opinion, perhaps. What do you think about this? Has it impacted these articles? Various articles have been written, provisions given out in the Constitution.
All I can say is partly it has been impacted. And the fact that it has been impacted partly, it still is not able to fulfill its mandate. You see, our Constitution will just be a Constitution if it's not put into flesh and action in its own self. We might be citing all these articles and giving them as references, but if we cannot be able to make them practical and to implement them so that they are able to do the mandate they are required to do, then we just render it back as the Constitution.
Actually, some people believe that So some people believe that some of the provisions that have been given in the Constitution are the same ones. Most of them have been implemented, and so they're giving again the BBI, and perhaps they think that it will take a lot of time to implement some of them.
Exactly, but more or less it's like you're overfeeding a child who's still growing.
Okay.
You've already given them milk, but you still want to add even much more food. They won't be able to stomach. What gets to happen is either they will puke or it might choke them. Now that is the aspect. Now, if we have not even fully exhausted the just implemented constitution to meet its mandate, if we keep on adding laws and bylaws that keep on complementing it, at the end of the day, it's either going to choke us as a country or it's going to even make us puke it and not accept it at all. It's not going to make relevance to all of us as it's supposed to be. So it's more or less of, let us first of all look into what we implemented in 2010 as a constitution. Has it met its mandate? Which aspects have not been met? Can we be able to implement them to the fullest so that they meet their mandate? Now, having implemented our constitution, what seems to be a loophole or a left out ideology amongst our constitution? And how are we able to now bring in another law that is to complement it so that it becomes complete?
Actually, do you think that the youth have got all it takes to bargain for power in this country and leadership positions in this country?
As much as numbers, yes. As much as knowledge and competence, still in progress. But I believe they can give a run for people's money in as much as leadership, if only they put their minds and hearts to it.
So what do you think?
Change.
Yeah, I think they have, because we already have youth. Not all the youth are just on the back, the behind. Some of the youths are really on the forefront. Mm-hmm. Some of the youths are actually in parliament.
Exactly.
The challenge is also we're not seeing them now bringing in the changes that we refer to, sure, or we expect, especially because of their youthfulness. Mm-hmm. So again, youthfulness is nothing if there's no character, exactly, and there's no commitment.
Actually,
so, yeah,
it's just like to add on. We as Kenya boast, mm-hmm, of the youngest Senate in Africa, mm-hmm, the youngest Senate that holds young persons in, mm-hmm, in its own capacity. Sure. But have we been able to accept that whatever it is the Senate has given us is worth enough to speak or talk about? That is like something.
You just said that character, yeah, is very important. Well, the leaders, in a leader, we need a Caesar's type of personality. Yeah. So, in fact, chapter 6 of the Constitution, yeah, elucidates much on how a state officer should carry out themselves.
Yes,
mm-hmm, and of course, leadership. There is leadership and integrity. Yeah. We have young parliamentarians, yeah, and like Johnson Sakaja. We have Babu Wino. Yeah. We have Charles Njagwa, Ali Nur Mohammed. We have Naisula Lesuda. Just to mention a few. Yeah. Like if you look at their conduct in public and in private, yeah, do you think that there is, if their character is anything to go by, do you think that there is hope for the youth, for future leadership, to take the mantle as the leaders of tomorrow?
Not all of them are performing bad. There are some of the youths that are doing a very brilliant job.
Okay. True.
But some of them have also bad characters. But mostly it depends on the mentorship. Because you see, the challenge is what kind of mentorship has happened. If the politicians that you have mentioned, all of them, you can always know who their mentors are, by their public, the display. Transactions, yeah, True. So most oftenly is, you see, the challenge is we are living in a country whereby you've been mentored. You will be judged based on how much money you have, the way you are flamboyant, how you drive and all that, or what house you live in and all that. And if we are judging now people based on that, and the youth, you see, that is why when the youth come into leadership, they want to amass wealth as fast as possible. Yeah. That's why you see when some of the youth also within the parliament, or the leaders out of parliament, they've been indicted on various corruption issues, because they want to be like their mentors, because they were shown, like in a certain community, if you see the best house, it must be of somebody who was in procurement. If you want to see the best car, it is somebody who is. We're not trying to attribute success based on hard work, based on entrepreneurship, but it's based on how connected you are. and that is being transferred to the youth, and that is the biggest problem that we have.
Actually, we're talking about youth leadership.
Yeah.
But you've just mentioned that some of the youth would like to behave like their mentors.
Yes,
because who I believe that are way older than them.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a difference between the youth leadership and, of course, the aging leaders? Yeah. Or you think that when the mantle has been passed to them, they will actually do exactly what their mentors did?
Yeah, we've had, of course, the transformation that has been brought there is because there are some mentors who have done a good job, but there are some mentors who have done a terrible job in terms of mentoring the youth into leadership. That is why, at least we've seen, Kenya is not the same way it was a couple of years ago. Because of progress that has been made, and that is good mentorship, and is attributed also to good leaders who have come after good leaders.
Somewhere, as I said earlier, in a leader we need a Caesar's type of personality. Do you think that the current youths we have today meet that threshold of leadership?
We just need to look at it in a matter of choice, preference, character.
Sure.
Now, this is what happens is, we cannot apply the fact that however much we have our parents and older leaders, they're leaders who, even in their old age, have had an outstanding record of proper performance. And at the same age group or bracket, we have people who have a very work line to their names. Still happens with the same youth as well. We have youths who've been diligent in standing for what it is they deem fit. And we have others who also have a record in giving whatever it is that is bad. But it all still boils down to the individuals that we place there. What is it they have to their name? And having given what Ronald has said, having empowered something, you can empower someone negatively or positively. And how they get to utilize it brings the difference. Someone was saying, in our times when we did Kcse and Kcpe, results used to come 3 months afterwards. But nowadays, with the reign of Magoha came in, results could come after a week. And for KCC, they could come even in a month's time. And someone would ask, it's still the same position that was being held, but the process is fastened. It simply means someone is diligent to the call that they've been given. So be it a youth, whoever it is that has been your model or your mentor, how have you decided to use the advice they've given you to put a change,
so according to you,
and give a different
it means
narrative?
that whether it's the aging generation or the youth, it doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
But specifically, it means, okay, according to you, there will be no change. Whether the youth come in and the aging, the other guys go.
If the current transactions of our country, Kenya, are to go by with devices and no one getting to put a change, will still be in the same way. It's the same thing I would say if a parent is not able to induct proper habits in their children, they'll still grow with them. Wanasemanga mtoto mleavyo ndivyo akwavyo. So if the kid grows with that character, it will be indifferent for him to give a different aspect to the son or the daughter unless they themselves decide to put a change on it.
Okay. The natural human cycle that governs the role of age will one day, of course, hand over country to the youth. Now, how can the youth equip themselves and adequately to prepare themselves for this role, for the role of leadership? Because at one time, whether the aging leadership are in seat or not, the leaders will just have to take the mantle. Well, how can the youth equip themselves? Because you had mentioned earlier that some of the youths do not see the need of maybe voting or involving themselves in other political decisions, in the decision of this country. So what do you think, how can the youth themselves equip themselves adequately?
I think even before Ronald speaks, we were talking with him in the waiting room, and he gave some little good insight. You see, we are forgetting that however much we were youth, at some point in time we are going to be the aged. And when we are the aged, it will be our children and our counterparts will be calling themselves the youth. So the question is, as a youth, how am I making this journey possible for me and for the youth that is coming right behind me? It needs not to be about myself alone. I'm not supposed to be looking at the aspects of I'm enriching myself at the expense of others. But at the end of the day, when I am aged, there would be a youth I would love to probably follow back in my footsteps. So in preparation, first of all, for the mantra that we are supposed to pick, we need to have a mindset of looking towards the future. That in the future, we are not going to remain young, but we are still going to be old, yet we would have set pillars that would make even the young people marvel at what they see. If Kina Jomo Kenyatta, Waruinge, and those people had not fought for the future, we would not be boasting of a Kenya that is free and independent. So first of all, as youths, we need to look at long-term goals. We need not to see at at precedence of our noses of what we are to aim within a short time. We need to look at investments on growth of the country that will pull us to the future. The other thing is, there has been a long narrative of corruption in this country. As youth, if you're not able to tackle it and be integral, then we cannot change that narrative. It still will be able to follow us even as we get to grow and shred off the youth bracket in itself as it's supposed to be. And lastly, we need to be proactive in how we get to look at. I'm not saying employment is a mentality that we need to shed off, because we also need to be employed and employ other people. But we need to be proactive and objective in whatever it is that we do. Let's change the narrative. Let's not make our kids learn unasoma primary, you get to learn in primary so that you go to high school, so that you go to university, so that you get a well-paying job. But let's try to see on how we can encourage ourselves to be proactive and produce the much we can to be self-sufficient as a country. That is the narrative that we can change. But if we're still looking at aspects of wanting to probably work under someone or be led in some other certain aspects, you might be forced to go along the same chain for you to survive with the others. So it's being objective, proactive, independent in whatever we do, and also look at the future, because it is a journey that we all pass by and cross through.
Ronald, what do you think about this? How can they adequately prepare themselves for this role? Because it's coming.
You know, that's a difficult question, because
Exactly.
Yes.
you know, in Kenya, when you talk about the youth, it's like talking about SMEs. You know, we've never defined who is a youth, and we have never defined what is an SME.
According to the youth, that is
So
18 to
people
35 years.
call themselves
Okay.
based on
0
the
to 35, yeah.
benefits that are there.
Exactly.
You know, especially if you want to become a president, even if you are 50 years and above,
You're a youth.
you say, I'm a youth.
Uh-huh.
You know, if you want to beat your competitor, you say he's an old man. And then if there is something that is bad, you say, no, I'm an old man, you know. If something is being shared to old people, like now the vaccines, everybody is above 50, you know.
The narrative changes.
The narrative.
With
So
the
normally,
profits.
so there is what you can, it's best, if you're saying from 18 years and above, is a youth, then there is
From 35 and
different,
below.
there is a different strategies to be used from a different youth level.
Exactly.
You see, if you are between 18 years and 25 years, that's a knowledge, and that's a knowledge area, you know. You need to amass as much education and knowledge as much as you can. You need to develop the experiences that you want to develop. You need to understand what you want to become. You know, you need to find your purpose as a youth. What do you want to grow into? And then that is what we are saying is even the era of mentorship. You need to have that kind of mentorship, somebody to guide you based on the various options that are there. When you are around 24 years, 23, 24 years, when you finish university and all that, you need to start now immediately into your career and start building the experiences and discovering really this is your passion and this is what it means in practice. So maybe if you are out of university or out of college, now you start working on what you really want to become. If you are an agriculturalist and trying to discover and see areas that you can tweak your passion in order to realign with your abilities and your strength. So at 30 years, you must really have defined who you want to become as a youth. If you are still lost and you don't know who you want to become at 30, it's almost very difficult for you to recall yourself. You know, so for us in our company, we normally say that at 30, you must be coming at a senior level, a manager level, because you have already understood your purpose, you have already firmed up on your strategies, and this is what you want to come. Between 30 and 40 years is active productivity. You must be working.
So, like, generally, we realize that 75% of, That's a fact.
Yeah.
75% of the Kenya's population
Yeah.
is the youth.
Yeah.
We have around 6.5%
Yeah.
of the parliamentarians
Yeah.
as the youth. Now, how can we change this? How can this change? What can the youth do about the? How can the youth? Do
So
this?
I can comment to you a number of things. One is knowledge.
Mhm.
Ensure that the youths that we have invested in
Equipped.
education,
Mhm.
and make sure that the youth are knowledgeable enough about the opportunities that exist, about their role in the society, in the government, in the business,
Sure.
in employment. What is their role? So they must have the knowledge and the guidance that is required. Then number two is legislation. Ensure that even though we have these youths at the disposal, we have the necessary legislation that is able to provide the necessary environment and govern on the youth in their action plans. And then the other aspect of it is environment. Now, to create an environment whereby these youth can be able to flourish in their functions. So legislation is like what you're talking about, the constitution, that even what you want to do for the youth has been entrenched in the constitution, that nobody will be able to do what? To sidestep that. So they have youths have been educated, are knowledgeable enough. We have invested in their education and the knowledge, and there is a lot of awareness that has been made on the youth. There is the legislation that provides that. The environment has been created to provide for that particular youth advancement, and then the youth can step into the leadership position.
Amen.
Yeah, and consequence management, that when youths actually now go into corruption, do we have a system that checks them out and punish them? This is what we call consequence management, so that they are directed accordingly. Yeah, because if there is, you see, the problem is now when people, we are saying that they are corruption people, but we are not seeing the consequences of corruption being
Tackled and dealt with.
Because somebody was mentioned in corrupt, there are no cases that they have not been closed, and there's no judgment.
And they're still continuing to transact.
Yeah, to transact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming to this show.
It's a pleasure.
Honoring my invite. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my time has come to an end of the show. And as I leave, I would like to leave you with a certain quote from William Kcpe. This is a quote for the youth, as he says, and I quote, "Youth is full of sport, age's breadth is short. Youth is nimble, age is lame. Youth is hot and bold, age is weak and cold. Youth is wild, and age is tame. You are told you will be the leader of tomorrow." Now, when is tomorrow coming? That is a question most of the youth have asked themselves. Well, thank you so much for joining this show. This has been The Insight. And my name is Eugene Ochieng. Join us next time, Friday, this time, same place, GBS TV. Thank you.